three.
Number three. So I'm going to work through, like I've been doing in the past, I'll go through the levy rate where we're at, then we'll head into the budget to see if you have questions. I want to continue to remind you, I know you know, but I'm still going to say it, it's a work in progress. It is an estimate, and things can change. So what is said today, it may be different come a month from now, and it may be different when we get to October when we actually certify. But this is our best guesstimate of where we're going to be, and then I'll get into the budget piece just after that. So we did receive our July 1st estimate, and that's exactly what it is. It's an estimate. It comes on a wonderful Excel spreadsheet, and I gave you a cut of that in the bottom right-hand side. It says, this is what your state equalization aid is estimated to be. For us, it's $51 million coming from state aid. Put that in perspective, it was $43,490,000 this school, or past school year in 17-18. Pending our audit, we will have a surplus of around $6 million, which is going towards prepaying debt payments as well as fund balance, neither of which are considered expenses. So we have to understand that somehow that's going to impact the state equalization aid. It's not a dollar for dollar exact correlation. There is a calculation that's involved with that, and we're working on that, but for our purpose, we're estimating right around $46 million. So as you can see, the state aid is going to increase, which then in turn will decrease what we ask from the taxpayers. The TIF value, I estimated back in before we got the July 1 estimate, higher than the value that they gave us. So the TIF out value, that's the total value of our entire levied area, is $4,285 billion. Yeah, it's $4,285,118,000. So it went up slightly, and I have that on the next slide. Last year it was 4.264, and now it's 4.285. So it slightly went up. Yes.
I'm sorry. Should I hold my questions to the end?
Up to you. If it's related to that spreadsheet.
It's related to the $6 million number. You said some is going towards prepaying debt and some is going towards fund balance. How much in each of those categories?
Great question. 3.5 million is going to our debt payments, and the remainder will go towards fund balance.
Okay. Because you said about $46 million for what you're estimating are paid from the state with taking into account the $6 million. You said it's not dollar for dollar, but it's pretty darn close. It's about $5.5 million.
Correct.
With that calculation, we've had this discussion before. Is there a sweet number where if we took less money to put into fund balance and would put it into Fund 46, our long-term?
We can't expense any more for 2017-18. So we go with the estimate that we currently have. Like I can't go back and make expenses for last year with that money.
Okay.
So
the money saved, we either can go into fund balance or
prepay debt.
Prepay debt?
Yep.
We can't prepay more debt?
We could, but again, debt isn't considered an expense, so it would still hold as revenue.
So we're stuck with $6 million.
We are, and so again, I overestimated. So at this point, if state revenue were to be more than what we estimated, it would bring down our tax levy. I wanted to make sure that we kept the levy, not kept the levy because we're not controlling that piece of it, but reporting out what the levy would be. I'd rather it be higher, right, in our estimate than lower, just in case if it comes out and then it ends on going up, well, that's not what we want to see. So I'm trying to keep it as close as where we think estimate-wise, but being realistic and keeping that so that if there's any room for error, it would be down, not up.
Okay.
I'm still assuming the same membership of 8,200. I think that's going to be low based on what we're starting to see in the enrollment center as it's starting to pick up tremendously. So that number may change. As I alluded to, there's a point where if enrollment goes up to a point, we actually begin to start losing money because our whole harmless amount goes down. So while enrollment going up is great, absolutely that's what we want. It's a rolling 3-year average, so we have to accommodate for that, if you will. Again, I'm keeping the estimate around 8,200 members. That may change a little bit. I don't see it changing drastically. So just updating, it's where it was last time. Maximum revenue per member right now is about $10,023 per member that we have in the district. So obviously, if you multiply that out by the member rates that we had in the previous slide, that's where our revenue limit comes. So we do have a hold harmless exemption. Again, that's based on declining enrollment over time. And then included in that is rescinded taxes, and then we have the general aid amount, which I again took out some money from that, knowing that we are going to have extra revenue from 17-18. And all of that, if you look in that spreadsheet that I sent to you via email, is all calculated inside of that spreadsheet. We do qualify for high poverty aid. It's a small amount, but we do qualify for it. So that gives us our total state aid that we receive. And of course, with our levy limit, or I'm sorry, with our total revenue limit, whatever the state gives us, the rest is offset by property taxes. Right now, I'm calculating a all-fund levy rate of $10.22. So it has gone down from where we initially had it in June and again in April.
Significantly.
Correct.
What is the main reason for that?
Part of it is, again, we assume some of that revenue from the sale of the building. That's not calculated in this now, right, because we're out of that
Okay.
area. So that's going to drive down that cost or drive down that amount. But we're going to have to keep an eye on the sale of the building for next year, and again, the impact on the tax levy, because that will be revenue that I'm anticipating that we place right into fund balance, that we continue to build that reserve so we don't hold $1 million in short-term borrowing.
I had a question about that, but you have more to go, so.
I'll get to that, yep.
That's on the budget.
The energy efficiency exemption, we talked about that last time we were together, as well as the per pupil categorical aid of $654 per pupil, is all in that calculation as well. So some of the assumptions, I went with obviously the building not selling in 2017-18. Therefore, I carried forward that short-term borrowing interest payment on our budget. Again, my goal is we have a meeting this week to discuss options. In the case that the building sells, again, I'm very confident it's going to sell. So we have to have a game plan right when we get that money in our bank. What can we do to offset some of that short-term borrowing that we currently do? We're looking at either a note, a line of credit, a mixture of both. We'll figure that out with our financial advisor and see what's the best option for us as a district. Yes?
When does that payment come out? The $1,050,000, when does that come out?
Part of it will come out in the fall, and then in April, we pay the remainder of it.
So when does it come out in the fall?
I don't have that in front of me. I haven't paid it yet, so I'm going to assume October. I don't know the payment date for it.
Well, it makes a difference, right? Because if we don't close the building and it's October, then we pay half of it.
Correct.
Versus if we close in September and we don't have to pay anything.
Well, to throw a little bit of a monkey wrench, so debt payment is calculated on an annual calendar year, but we budget on our school district year. So that payment's already been calculated, right? I'm calculating for future payments of winter and fall of next year. So what you're getting to is exactly right. If I'm gonna, no matter what, we have the money there for the fall payment.
Right.
We're really planning for the 2019 calendar year for debt payments. If that is no longer in the equation at all, that sum of money less whatever we use for short-term borrowing would now be excess or extra money.
Okay, with that being said, are we have any plans for using that money, if we have it?
Well, we always have, we've talked about capital improvement plan as one option. We always have other things we can use the money on, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
I just want to make
until
sure
we
we're
have it.
thinking about it.
Oh, yeah,
that we have
absolutely, absolutely.
Something so that we don't end up again with our $6 million that we're gonna get.
I'm gonna be interested to see what happens. What rate do we get on the note if we do take out a 12-month note? I'm also gonna be interested that once we do pay back that amount and our audited financials come in, which I think are gonna look good, we may get another credit change, and that, again, would impact many things. So, again, not going back to the analogy, but yeah, we know that there's gonna be a savings here. The question is when. So, but yeah, we do have plans for that. CIP, and again, looking at restructuring debt as well as an option. Open enrollment, so we listened to the discussion today from Jeff. So when I do open enrollment, even though I actually had a little bit off of his estimate, I'm still only calculating at 72 seats being occupied through open enrollment. Anything above and beyond would be things that I did not assume or budget for. I would like to keep it that way just because then any flux or changes come September, October, we still have some wiggle room there as well. The budget, the one that you have tonight, is currently imbalanced. I did add something, and I apologize, but I did add a line item for safety. So it is a low amount, it's only $25,000, but that gets us started with a safety committee, that gets us some training, and that gives us, I guess the way I look at a budget is anything that's on that spreadsheet is things we have to think about and cognitively make a decision on whether or not we want to fund that going forward. So I put that line item in there. Next year, if we choose this is extremely important, we would like to continue to add money there, awesome. Or maybe we see that it's not the way we want to go, that's fine too.
And that's separate from the safety grant that we got from the
Correct.
state?
Yep, the safety grant is nowhere in this because that's money in, money out.
Okay.
Excellent question though. But again, there are things that we know, perfect example, I had one school reach out to me say, well, the safety glass only goes around certain doors of our building, I want it around all the doors. Okay, well, we have to figure out how to pay for that, right? They want to pay it out of their building budget. I would prefer coming up with a solution that doesn't impact money from kids. So if we figure out things like that and maybe slide it into that item, that's what I kind of envision, right? Oh, we need an extra camera here, great, let's plan for that and budget for that next year.
Isn't the safety grant supposed to pay for some of that stuff?
Some of it, yep, but not all of it. So in the case I was just talking about, the school wants to do more than what the grant will allow. So we have to pay for it somehow if we really do go down that avenue.
Even the second round?
Second round won't cover that.
Okay.
But we did apply for the second round. Fund 46 is still in there, although it shows zero. We prepaid that one back in June, so that one is paid for. But I kept it in there just so that, again, we keep our eyes on it. And CIP, anytime I had extra money, as you see, it went up a little bit, but we continue to invest in our schools to make sure that they're the best places for our students each and every day. This also does include CPI for all employee groups. I have not met with the teachers union or the EAs, sorry, I was trying to even spell that out, but the EAs group I have not met with, but I am including that into the budget because I anticipate that. And then performance compensation for all employees for this coming school year.
All employees, including administrators?
Correct.
That's added back in, because that was
That's-
out from the last one.
Yep.
So that's an additional, was 800,000, wasn't it?
Correct. 1.2 for the teachers, 800 for at-will administrators. So again, CIPI increased there. Health insurance, again, I calculated that at 12%. Originally, I had budgeted 18%, so that's where some of the money went for CIP, right? Some of that savings that I had originally budgeted for, I slid into that line item, and again, I reiterated that we placed money into a budget line. Again, I know 25,000 isn't the amount we want there. Obviously, I would love to put millions, but it's a starting point. Yes?
I have concerns about only funding less than half of our normal CIP budget.
Okay?
I mean, usually we've been doing $3 million a year for the last, I don't know how many years, but now we're doing 1.1. And I have concerns how that can offset the good gains that we've made on our CIP projects and being able to get through things that have been lingering for too long because they were not properly funded. And I want to voice that concern. I know we have some other, monies that we may be able to get. We're reducing our healthcare rate and some maybe increases in our open enrollment and our actual enrollment that we might be able to have extra monies that we can put towards it. But I don't know if I see an additional $1.9 million coming out of that.
So yes, you're right, that is a concern. And we know that, but we also have to be realistic. Again, we should be planning and prepping and budgeting for it each and every year of $3.1 million. We'll get, or $3 million. Now, if you ask Steve, he'll say, well, it should increase, and absolutely. So we're gonna get to that point. But we had to, again, last year, if you recall, we prepaid that $3 million,
Yep.
right? So it wasn't necessarily in the budget, so we have to make sure that we placehold it and commit funds to that each and every year. I think we're in a really good place. Again, I didn't want to borrow money for that. That was one option we had. I just don't feel comfortable borrowing money each year to cover our CIP projects. Now, is that something we can look at every other year? Potentially, absolutely. But we also have to look at other ways we can shuffle money around and figure out, because again, wherever we take it from one place, we're taking it from something else. But yeah, absolutely, I understand, we gotta keep our buildings up. We have moved some of the projects that we could do under Act 32 money, so that's being taken care of as well.
Is this something where we could have prepaid some of the $6 million that we had in last year towards CIP for this next year?
Yeah, we could have. But again, my commitment is to reduce the short-term borrowing, because anything we put into short-term borrowing is money out the door. So right now, $1,040,000, $50, or $1,040,000 is going out the door to borrow money.
I understand that, but we were putting $3.5 million towards prepaid debt, plus $2.5 million just going into the general fund. If we took $1 million of that prepaid CIP and put $1.5 million into the general fund, I still think we're doing pretty well. And we still have, and then we have an additional $1 million that can be used for fixing things that have been put off for a very long time. I wish that maybe we could have discussed that a little bit more before everything was said and done about it.
Remember, we can, so I have a meeting with the financial advisors, but I could pose that, because we can still take quote-unquote fund balance money, right, and put it towards that. We would just, we'd have to mark that or earmark that money. So that's still an option.
Okay, I mean, I'm just me, I'm not, I know what the rest of the board feels about it, but I feel strongly about that because I think that it's a snowball that it just continues to build when you start backing off from it, and I don't wanna see it going down because it's the easiest thing to cut, it seems. I don't wanna cut from things from kids and things like that as well, but we have buildings that are falling apart, parking lots that people can't drive in, sidewalks that are cracked and are safety hazards. These are things that you only can put off for so long, and it's, less than half of what we've been getting for the last several years. I mean, if it was closer, I'd feel better about it, but it's just me.
So the other way I look at it is, we know that there is a savings, quite significant savings, once we can work out our short-term borrowing, and that's an easy place to take that money from, right? It's committed money right now, but in the future, obviously, we know that there's going to be a savings. It's just a matter of time.
So, a couple other thoughts around some of the long-term, and we've had preliminary conversations about this, but long-term use of fund balance. It's not only rebuilding it so we're not paying the interest for short-term borrowing, but we've also got 5 years out in front of us where we don't have this space in this building anymore, right? So we've talked about trying to get $1 million a year into fund balance to be able to pay to remodel the old building, not go borrow for it, but pay it. So that's a cost that's out in our future. We have in this year's, we just approved it, in this year's goals, right, the work around our compensation systems and starting to look at the post-employment benefit plan that we have that is long-term. Again, financially, it's just not going to be sustainable, but when you make a shift from a defined benefit to a defined contribution plan, you need some money to seed that plan up front. Well, that needs to be sitting in fund balance, otherwise it hits the budget, right? So there's some other strategies that we're working through where we need to rebuild that fund balance because we're gonna need to spend some of it in order to pursue those other goals that we've set for ourselves. So I think it's just, I agree with you, we've gotta keep up with the buildings, but it's also being mindful that there's a couple other moving parts inside of fund balance that we also wanna make sure we're taking care of.
We're still funding money out of this budget for the fund balance as well, correct?
Correct. There's
So
still a line
putting
item.
money in, and, I mean, we're putting $2.5 million. I'm not saying we don't put anything in, but I just think that with the extra money that we have when we're saving money out of each year, when we're taking such a drastic amount away from something that we've been budgeting for so long, I'm afraid of moving backwards in that route.
So I agree with you, but to be clear, we weren't budgeting for it, we were borrowing for it.
We budgeted for it last year, right? We paid for it all.
So, but we've been doing more borrowing for it than budgeting.
I understand that, and we shouldn't budget, or we shouldn't borrow for
Right.
it, I understand that, and I'm not saying we should borrow for it.
No.
What I'm saying is we had the money, we could have done a little bit different things with it, and, I don't know, it was worth the discussion to me, maybe.
No, and I agree with that 100%. And again, I made sure that all of that is in that budget document, because that's the discussion, right? Where are we going to put the limited money we have? Where does it belong? But again, I'm committed to getting that fund balance to where it needs to be, so that, again, we can reduce that short-term borrowing and use that money in a different way.
I would, if in the past, if it was borrowed for that 3 million, could an argument have been made that was the wrong number to have been borrowing from? That number maybe could have been reduced. The budget amount would have been reduced from 3 million, let's say 1.5 or 2 million, and then this is then, I think, a target closer to maybe what realistically should have been.
Well-
I agree. I'm one that likes to cut off borrowing. I think, I like the idea of eliminating that short-term borrowing.
One of the other things that we're looking at is, as we look at the CIP plan that you guys looked at, where did the 3 million come from, is the question I asked as well. So that's what we're looking into, especially now with all the Act 32 money that we've placed into the schools. I'm hoping that with all the work we've done, that maybe it isn't 3 million. I don't know that answer, that's what Steve and his team is looking into. But if we're going to dedicate money each and every year out of our budget, I wanna make sure it's the money they need. And again, I don't know if it's 3 million or not, but that's what we're investigating. So just a little bit before we go into the actual budget side of it, but for our team, the next steps for us, again, the sale of the administration building, September 28th is the drop dead date, so that's in the near future. So again, we're looking at other short-term borrowing options for the district. We are continuing to monitor general enrollment and open enrollment in and out. I'm just shocked at the amount of people coming into the enrollment center on a daily basis. It's a great thing, but we have to keep our eye on that. Review our CIP list and reorganize priorities, again, within that 5 and 10-year plan, making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck, if you will, for the projects that we can get done in 2018-19. And again, with what I alluded to is the Act 32 projects. How does that impact the CIPs, and does it, and how does that help us? The discussion we had earlier regarding health insurance rates, obviously we're looking at that one. That's a large expense, so that's one that we keep our eye on. Grant paid positions is one I found an error as I was going through some of the documents, but what positions are paid for grants, and how can we maximize those grant monies to ensure that we're utilizing it in the right space. And I'm starting to get into Skyward of uploading the actual budget, so that's in the system, so I can start doing those pretty report outs for you starting probably in a month from now. I'll be able to get those back into the financial updates every month, the second meeting of each month. And then the audit findings, obviously we won't get that until November, but when that comes in, that's something we're gonna have to take a look at and figure out what efficiencies can we put into place for our team and for all the schools, frankly, to make sure that we're being efficient and we're being smart with how we're accounting for all of our money in, money out.
Can you expand just a little bit on the grants, as far as what you were getting to?
So we have some positions that are funded just by grants. When I went in to update one of the salary sheets I have, it was coding one of the employees under the general budget. Well, now I'm claiming that as a cost, but we're actually not paying for it. So I just have to make sure that that's all clear, otherwise it's going to hit the budget the wrong way, right? So just going through and making sure every employee paid through grants is truly marked that way.
So that was something that's basically was ongoing, right? When we were having some of these big issues, I know the big word was, it was coded wrong.
Potentially. I don't know how big of this problem was. It just happened to be that I was on that person in the spreadsheet, so now I need to dive into that.
Thank you.
We use a spreadsheet for all of our positions and budgeting. I will be looking into getting that into Skyward.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's a big project though. So that's where we are with the levy. As far as the budget, so all of the revenues are on the left-hand side. And then the budget status, now I'm off, I don't know why, I must have my old one up. But the one in front of you should be zero or balanced, if you will. So I
You can put that up.
well, I can, but mine's off, so I must have brought the wrong one. But just for viewing sakes, all the stuff in yellow is salaries and benefits, and everything all the way down to summer school, if you will. In the red, and you can see the changes from what we talked about in June versus where we are today. In red, or whatever color this is, those are contractual or legal things that we have to pay for. So those are things there's no way around it, so we have to calculate it and make sure it's in the budget, so we take care of it. The fund transfer to Fund 27, remember that we track all of the expenses in Fund 27 for special education. And then we have to transfer money from Fund 10 to cover those costs. We have to keep them separate, so we calculate all of that. Fund 30 transfer, I'm keeping it there so we keep our eye on it for future budgets, but right now that's calculated at 0, we're prepaying that. Same thing with long-term capital improvement, Fund 46 for the fields. Fund reserve restoration, I've kept it at $500,000 in next year's budget. And then we have the building and department budgets, again, which we've been looking at, and I've included copies of each one in your packet. And then you have grant expenses, and then again, same thing for special education. One of the big ones that changed for us that helped bring us closer in line was actually our retiree payment. So we had a discussion about that last time. It's the payment for vacation time payout, or those types of numbers. That actually, I was over by about $120,000. I just assumed it would be similar to that of the year before. It's obviously gone down as we start having less people retiring from our school district. So that was over-calculated, but that has been calculated in, and it's less of a cost, so that's a positive. So right now, we're in a good place. I guess my concern is always going to be the same until the day where we can actually certify it, is where are we going to fall with the levy rate? Obviously, it's our best guess right now. But again, what's the impact come third Friday? Because that's going to have the largest impact on this budget is how many kids are in seats, what's our membership count, how many open enrollment kids in, how many open enrollment kids out. Those are the big factors in the budget. Right now, yeah, we're balanced, but that could change quickly, just depending on where we fall third week of September.
Thank you for all the supplemental worksheets.
Yep.
And all the detail that go into all of that. It's incredibly helpful to read through it and understand how, the method behind the madness.
Where we get the numbers from.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's very, very helpful and much more transparent than, that we have seen. So thank you for taking that.
My hope is to make it a pretty worksheet on Google or something where everybody can see it.
Can
we make it
pretty doesn't pay the
bigger?
bills.
Can we get jumbo sheets?
Yeah. So I guess that's the question, right? So what are we gonna do if we happen to be in a positive place where there is extra money? And I guess my thought process was to throw it in CIP because that's a logical place to throw it at this point in time. But to your point, I mean, any guidance there would be great. My concern is going to be if it doesn't go the way we want it to, and it actually does not go that way. That's something that we've been thinking about and planning for, but again, just to be aware that could happen too.
Any other questions for Mike? So the next step is the full hearing on September 17th.
That changed, it is now September 17th. Yep.
And then it gets brought forth, assuming that the hearing goes fine, that it gets brought forth in October, early October?
End of October.
End of October?
Yeah, the final
Because I have to
certification is
certify it like the
30
3rd of
30 days or
November or something like that,
Okay.
yeah. So I'll get there's the piece that goes in the newspaper on August 22nd. So there's little pieces going into that.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Mike? All right, thank you. All right, if there isn't anything else this evening, going once, going twice? We will need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?